GOP lawyer and activist found dead. Police rule it a homicide. Here's a clip.
Stories like this today might be shocking. I mean, they're shocking no matter what. But a story like this coming out today maybe has many people worried. So I want to open this segment by saying sometimes bad things happen. Crimes happen. That's why we have law enforcement. That's why we have criminal courts. Since the beginning of human history, humans have committed crimes against each other. What I'm trying to say is the story I'm about to read you may actually just be a local affair. It may be something related to a personal beef. We really don't know. But this is the story from NBC Boston about a GOP activist and lawyer being stabbed to death in his own home. Discovered with a stab wound to his neck. Now, according to the story, they're saying they're questioning whether or not it was self-defense. Sure, fine, whatever. I just want to say this. While I do have that disclaimer that maybe it's this lawyer guy stole money from somebody, maybe he was having an affair on his wife, maybe they got into a fight over a poker game, who knows? Whenever there's a story about a right-wing individual as the perpetrator, the motive drops. The question from every corporate media outlet, was it extremism? Who is this crazed MAGA fanatic? They say, here's the motive, here's the transcript, here's the manifesto. Whenever the victim is on the right, oh, well, we don't know. There's always an excuse. Whenever the perpetrator is on the left, it's, we'll get to it. We're still waiting on that manifesto from the transgender individual. Typically, these things are released very quickly. But again, I don't know. But let's talk about what's going on in this country. And we'll talk about this, and we'll talk about social breakdown. Vivek Ramaswamy says, we cannot have national divorce. He is correct. We can't allow this great nation to fall. I would argue, and in my view, the far left extremists desperately want some kind of social disorder and breakdown, potential revolution or civil war, because all of these things lead to the end of the U.S. Constitution. And as much as my friend, Michael Malice, does not believe it is meaningful as I do, I do think, and I should elaborate on what I mean by meaningful, but that's my point, it is. It provides a legal basis and a framework by which our culture stands. Imperfectly, nonetheless. But it does provide some protections. At least until people start to realize that the courts have no ability to enforce anything and it's all cultural. Then you will get far left extremists setting up autonomous zones. And the only question is whether or not the executive branch can and is willing to stop them. Likely isn't. We saw this with Chaz Chop. We saw this with the George Floyd autonomous zone. We saw the same thing.
The one good thing if there was national divorce is the federal government would be smaller. But yeah, I don't know. It sounds really interesting. The United States wouldn't be the powerhouse that it is in the world if the country broke up. So the wealth would drop dramatically. So that would be a downside. But really, the leftist country would not survive very long, and then they would just come crawling back to the right states because they'll just tax everyone into oblivion. So
in Georgia, they don't care. When these extremists set up these autonomous zones, cops do nothing. But let's read this story and break down what's going on. NBC Boston reports a suspicious death investigation that was underway this week in Durham, New Hampshire, has been ruled a homicide after an autopsy was completed on the victim. The New Hampshire Attorney General's office said in a statement Sunday that the medical examiner determined the death of 41-year-old Alexander Talcott was caused by a stab wound to the neck. His manner of death had been ruled a homicide. A spokesperson for the Attorney General's office has confirmed that Talcott was a GOP activist and lawyer. The state director of the New Hampshire chapter of the Republican National Lawyers Association said in a statement to NBC Boston that Talcott stood out as a staunch advocate for the core values of the Republican Party. His unwavering belief in liberty, free markets, and limited government resonated deeply in his role as a lawyer. Within the RNLA, his leadership was unwavering in promoting our shared values, ensuring every member felt empowered and well prepared, William O'Brien said of Talcott. Alex was an exceptionally skilled champion for the rule of law and the importance of fair and honest elections. We will forever honor Alex's selfless dedication and profound contributions to our shared vision of liberty through the legal processes. O'Brien added his legacy will undoubtedly inspire future generations within the RNLA and the greater legal community. Talcott was
This
found
is
dead
sad.
in his Bennett home early Saturday
And
morning.
he's only 41.
There were numerous police vehicles on the scene, and the Attorney General's office said at the time they were actively investigating a man's suspicious death at the residence. His name wasn't released until Sunday, at which point officials said they had identified all of the people involved in the incident, and there is no known danger to the public. Investigators are continuing to look at whether or not the person who stabbed Talcott was acting in self-defense. Their name has not been released. An investigation into Talcott's death is ongoing, and further information has not been shared at this time. Self-defense.
His name would be interesting because, yeah, if it's someone a different political persuasion, that would definitely make you wonder.
In someone else's home.
That's
Makes
weird.
it hard for me to believe. But possible. Entirely possible.
It is possible.
Right? Somebody comes over for a meeting because there's a contentious circumstance over a debt, and no one expects things to get out of hand. And they're arguing and talking when a fight breaks out between the two men, and a guy
Who knows?
stabs
This
the other
is just
guy, and he
conjecture,
says he
but I see what
attacked
he's
me.
saying. Who knows what
I
happened?
think it is unlikely, to be completely honest. But I don't know exactly what happened.
Yeah, who
And I think it's
knows?
entirely likely the
police
story
need to
comes
give
out.
more
It's
details.
going to be that it was a debt, it was an affair, it was something stolen. It could be that the two guys were angry, and the dude in the house said, "Okay, fine, come in," and then something happened. But if it was a fight between the two individuals that broke out between the two individuals mutually, the other guy said it was self-defense, he was attacking me. We'll never know. The GOP lawyer.
Well, he
is
might
dead.
eventually, if the cops.
I want
give
to
us
talk to you
more
about where
details, or
this
if there's a
country is
camera.
going and why this story matters.
Yeah, but for right now,
First, the immediate assumption among most people in the political realm is that if a GOP activist and lawyer is killed, it's probably something political. And I think it's fair to say that
could
whatever
be.
the story may be, that's likely. I'll put it this way. Two guys are angry with each other. One guy is perhaps they're the same political party. Who knows? Perhaps there's an activist who's being sued. Perhaps there's a legal meeting taking place to stop some legal proceeding. Who knows? Politics probably does play a role to a certain degree, but I don't know. What matters is that people are going to view that story, and they're going to perceive it in much the same way as I expressed in the beginning. When a left-wing violent extremist engages in these actions, no manifesto, no motive, everyone's got to keep it hush-hush, and the story disappears. When the perpetrator is perceivably on the right, or if they can even justify in some way to claim he is, then you get all the motivations in the world and everyone asking that question. And this is where we are right now. From the Daily Mail, anti-migrant rally turns violent outside New York City Mayor Gracie's mansion. Trump supporters and counter-protesters clash after 100,000 people from the southern border flood the 5 boroughs.
I can pretty much guarantee you those aren't all Trump supporters. I knew they were going to say that when he started. I was like, oh, yeah, here we go. They're going to say, okay, these are all Trump supporters, because it's like, of course, even though they probably aren't. The left is turning on migration. If you've seen any of my other videos, the people in Chicago, people in New York, especially the black community in Chicago, they are turning on immigration super, super fast. And so are people in New York. You know, I saw these kids protesting outside at a school because they were putting them in their gymnasium. And they were saying, we support asylum seekers, but not on school grounds. So they're not Trump supporters. They're just pushing the leftist agenda so hard that even leftists don't like it anymore.
This is an interesting circumstance. This is New York City. Trump supporters in New York City.
That's what I would say.
Whoa.
He said the
In
same
reality,
thing. That's hilarious.
We have seen in Chicago and we have seen in New York, as well as many of these places, people,
the leftist
locals,
is driving people out of their parties so fast. It's outrageous.
whether Trump supporters or not, are furious over the massive influx of immigration, of migrants, illegal immigrants into their cities. Even the mayor is saying they can't handle it. And in many circumstances, you have these cities declaring states of emergency over it. So who are these far left extremists, quite literal terrorists, who are attacking locals trying to defend this country? The political extremism is on the rise. And now we have people fighting with each other. We have the police arresting different groups.
The same thing happened in California. They were having a gay pride assembly, and then it was at the end of it was in June, and then these people are out protesting it. The parents were, and then Antifa, they just come over and start attacking them. It was nuts. And then they went and talked to the congressperson from California, and the congressperson's just like, "Oh, you're making all this up and are just doing this for social media." He told that to a parent when as the assembly was going on. He could have just went in there and saw the assembly. But it's nuts. And then he was all talking and being nice to the leftists who were attacking the parents. It's so wild. Antifa's just nuts.
But eventually, something breaks down. Fighting ensues. People get arrested. Turns violent. I don't know where we're currently headed in this country. I think it is fair to say, oh, we're talking about civil war again. I said it. It's too early to drink, though, so you can't have a drink. Unless you're watching this video later. Civil war is possible. That's all I'm saying. Because when I posted the story about the GOP lawyer being killed, many people responded with civil strife. You've been watching the videos. And that's a quote from Stephen Marsh. You can tell me I'm wrong all day, every day. Maybe I'm silly for being the only one talking about it, but boy, does it feel like we are frogs in a pot boiling, and I'm the only one saying, guys, the temperature is going up. So
I don't know if you're the only one, but I see his point.
They're trying to indict the president. I'm sorry.
It's kind of a shtick.
They're trying to imprison the former president, Donald Trump, and frontrunner. People are blocking roads in various points across this country saying the world's ending. There's fires seemingly everywhere. Some people think the government's doing it on purpose, and others think that the world is ending because of climate change. It doesn't matter where you stand politically. That's not part of my argument. My point is, no matter what happens, there are two prevailing views on what is really happening and people fighting over it. And the fighting is getting worse. It's escalating. At this protest in New York City, you had far left extremists. Look at this. Andy No tweets, far left serial riot arrestees Jennifer Hansen and Atlanta terror suspect Teresa Chen were at the violent direct action today against the anti-migrant crisis protest in New York City. Hansen rushes in to fight before being pulled away by the police. Tensions are escalating. There are far left extremists traveling around engaging in overt acts of terror. In Atlanta, they actually stormed a government facility under construction.
And I mentioned California.
They were shooting at cops. One cop got shot, and they shot and killed one of these guys. Can we slow down for a second there, my friends? All right, let's go back to Atlanta. Let's slow down. Atlanta. Far left extremists occupy government territory. The government is trying to set up a police training facility. The far left extremists occupy this armed with weapons. The police approach. The extremists open fire on the police, striking one of the officers. The officers return fire, killing one of the extremists. That's called a shootout between political extremists and the government. And this person walking around free because the government is becoming impotent.
What?
To do anything about it. In Atlanta, innocent people had their homes destroyed. Well, I don't know who owned the homes. 2 homes that were under construction were burnt to the ground. Someone in their vehicle was forced out. The vehicle was flipped over and torched. Now it's just a private individual. And these people come out and say, we're innocent victims peacefully protesting. Okay. Sure. Man.
The media's
when
on
I saw
their
that
side.
video of like hundreds of far left extremists storming onto sealed government construction property, and they were like, we're nonviolent. It's like, bro, you just shot a cop. Provo, Utah. BLM rioters run up to a vehicle as it's driving down the intersection slowly and minding its own business, and they shoot the driver. Remember that story? You've got in Texas, an armed group of individuals approach a vehicle, one guy with a rifle and AK at low ready, and the driver opens fire, fearing for his life. The guy's got his hand on it low ready. Like, you want to walk around with a rifle? That's fine. You want to be part of a mob, a riotous mob, or a political extremist faction? Don't put your hands in a way in which you can threaten someone's life. Well,
yeah, then the DA, George Soros-funded DA here in Austin, they prosecuted that guy for it's self-defense.
That Uber driver's going to prison.
Well, I think he probably got appeal. I'll have to go actually look back into that because Greg Abbott, after he got convicted, was looking to pardon him. And then, but there's like a pardoning board here in Texas, so he had to go through that. And then he'll win on appeal also. It was like in an Austin jury. It's like, it's interesting.
We can ignore all of
it. A lot of people think that Austin's really far left, but I've lived here for 7 years, and from my experience, you will meet some people like that, but most people are like in the middle, So it's crazy that an Austin jury. They must have really selected those people really precisely.
These things and say, sometimes these things happen. By all means, please do so. I can't see the future. Protests happen in New York. What's the big deal, right? I just see the breakdown happening. When the police are continually being demonized, defunded, and refusing to take action, that's where things break down. Check this out. Andy No says an Antifa cameraman was taken down by police in an NYC direct action to confront people protesting the migrant crisis. Antifa photographers take photos to add to their doxing dossiers. Atlanta domestic terror suspect Teresa Shen can be seen in the video. Well, look, everyone's entitled to film, and the left and the right accuse each other of doxing, but the left is lying about it. I was at a protest. Mike Cernovich was speaking at Columbia, and there was a protest. I was just there filming. Some young college student, this is the creepiest thing. These people are evil, abject evil, went to the police and said I was a doxer and a harasser and was filming their faces for a white supremacist doxing dossier because they were people who were going to hunt them down and kill them. And the police said, ma'am, I have no idea what you're talking about. You know what I did? I pulled out my corporate press credentials, for which I have several from past and current jobs. And I said, she's lying. Here's my creds. And they said, I'm sorry about this, sir. Just don't worry about it. But see, that might work on anybody else. I'm just there but look what they're doing. Look what they're lying about. You see, that's what they do. In this circumstance, you have a man who's filming being pinned to the ground and arrested. What the left will do, and their corporate journalist allies, they'll take photos and say the police are arresting journalists. The far left extremists will carry small cameras or their phones and then say they're journalists. So when they engage in overt acts of violence, they can claim the police are targeting journalists. Then the people who don't pay attention, the people who say, I'm not political, and with all due respect, people like Oliver Anthony, get this false view of what's really going on because they don't pay attention. I'll talk about Oliver Anthony coming up at 4. I'm a fan. I think he's right about so much, but I do have some criticisms, not so much about him, but points to be made about the average person and what they're perceiving.
I'll probably cover that tomorrow.
I do think there's something interesting there. And I don't mean any disrespect. I just mean he, like so many other normie working class people, seem to think that there's some middle ground. These people are abject evil. They will lie to you. They will mercilessly beat you. They will try to kill you. Then they will lie to the press, and their allies in press will lie about what happened to trick the normies into defending them. That's what's happening. This is the breakdown.
But then it's going back the other way because, the indictment of Trump, and a lot of people are seeing this stuff more and more. They're going away from media.
You have this.
Mainstream media.
You have this. Clown World posted this video. It's a woman throwing a large object onto the hoods of police cruisers, smashing their windows. Why? Well, you see, what happens is after people are propagandized by the lies of the far left into believing that the police are the evil perpetrators, sometimes they are. Cops are people. But you get a far left extremist physically attack someone, which happens in this video. The police then arrest one of these people. They only film the arrest and they say the cops are targeting innocent journalists. Regular people then see the videos and say the police have gone rogue, allowing social disorder and social collapse. Vivek Ramaswamy says, national divorce is not an option. That would mean we lose the U.S. Constitution itself. I'm running for president to deliver a national revival instead. I like that. I like Vivek. Far from perfect. Good reasons and good questions about whether we can trust him. But for the most part, my conversations with him, he's been quick. And I got to tell you, people calling him the used car salesman. Sure. If he is, he's the best I've ever seen. I don't believe everything he says. That'd be stupid, of any politician. And his opinions have changed. That's fine. But when you have a real conversation with Vivek, he doesn't beat around the bush and he answers the questions and he addresses the critiques and the concerns. He thinks about it and he says, okay, it's Jordan Peterson-esque in a way. You say, hey, man, you recently said this like last year. And he goes, yeah, you know what? Maybe I was wrong about that. What else can I say? Right? I'm learning as I'm going. And you're like, well, what can you do? Trust him or not trust him? Michael Malice responded saying, national divorce is an inevitability and far more realistic than any semblance of constitutional rule. And y'all got me trending on Twitter for saying civil war. I'm just too famous, I guess. Okay, fine. I got a lot of followers. Thank you for watching my show and supporting my work. I really do appreciate it, but it is kind of weird because I don't even really think about that sometimes. Michael Malice is saying national divorce is inevitable. I don't even know if I go that far. I'm saying I think we may be entering a civil war. Civil war may be possible because we're seeing this escalation and the temperature keeps cranking up. All I'm really saying when it comes to these stories is we are frogs in a pot, and I am watching them crank the temperature up. And I'm telling you, their hand ain't going back the other direction. And there's no reason for it to. Everything is pushing this in one direction. But I still don't think national divorce is inevitable. There's so many variables before us. Donald Trump might win. I think Donald Trump has a very, 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 very strong chance of winning. Even Democrats are saying the odds are on his side. And if he does, that could lead to national divorce for sure. Or it could lead to a crackdown which crushes the corrupt deep state intelligence agencies.
And then they're also pushing so far, the left is. So it's like a lot of normal people that were on the left. I know a lot of people that were on the left, and now they lean right. Tim Pool's one of them. A few years ago, he leaned left, and then people tried to attack him in his New Jersey home, and then he's like, okay, I actually like guns, and now he's gotten way more libertarian over the last few years. So the more they push on this stuff, the more it just kind of, the pendulums will start swinging the other way. So I think it's interesting he's saying this. You know, he reads the news a lot, and that's probably why, because he sees all like the worst stuff. But then at the same time, if you dissect the polls and everything and just see what people are saying, because I look at the news all day too, you know, but I haven't been doing it as long, to be fair. But anyway, so people are just going back the other way because of all this stuff. Like the people in Chicago, New York, I was talking about, like the people, they hate immigration now. So I don't know. They're pushing. If they push too far, people are going to be like, okay, this is not what I want. I don't want immigration and stuff like that. So everyone will eventually move to the right, except for these crazy extremists that just want to fight and want a revolution. The people that don't want a revolution and they're just agreeing with policies, they are going to eventually just be like, okay, forget all this. I'm just going to agree with people on the right. And then if everyone's perceived as being on the right, except for this small faction, you know, there won't be national divorce. There would definitely be a crackdown.
Pushes out the cultural extremists and just shuts it down. And we get a national revival. Or maybe something happens to Trump. He's removed from the ballot. Vivek wins. I don't know. I have no idea. It's also possible that Joe Biden wins. Trump's name's taken off the ballot. No one believes that the election is legitimate. But at this point, you don't have weird questions about ballot fraud. You have overt actions to remove Trump from the ballot, in which case people now say, there's no question of fraud. They took Trump's name off the ballot. We didn't have an election. And then maybe then, you get a national divorce. I don't know for sure. But I can tell you that confidence is breaking. I want you to see this video. I may do a longer video on it, or maybe not. I talked about it in this morning's segment. Burning Man 2023, Nevada Rangers plow truck through Extinction Rebellion protests after the activists blocked a road into festival, causing miles-long gridlock. Well, that's it. Small handful of cultist nut jobs blocking a 2-lane highway. Okay. What happens? I mentioned this 3 years ago. What happens when 16, what's it? 16. Let's just say anti-government, not right, not left, just anti-government. Or not even that, but people with no confidence in government decide they're going to set up checkpoints. And I don't mean 16 people in one place. I mean at key routes in the Midwest, in states like maybe Nebraska.
I don't know if there's that many extremists to be able to pull this off.
An armed group, though. Local militia or otherwise, sets up a checkpoint. And they say the issue is, let's say there's no election. And I don't mean that in the sense that they just cancel it. I mean like Trump's name's removed from Florida or Ohio or Wisconsin. These people then say, we're not going to allow Capitol Police to organize in our state. We're not going to allow social credit scores. The government is illegitimate.
Okay, I see where he's going.
And not even any beef. Maybe these guys are like, look, law enforcement isn't dealing with the riotous mobs. It's not dealing with Extinction Rebellion.
I don't know
what happens
when
these people escalate tensions by blocking roads? So local militia groups say, we're going to secure our highways. Then they create massive jams. What happens when the groups get a bit more concerned when they see mob of maskless thieves clear out shelves at LA Macy's as stunned shoppers look on? It just keeps happening. 13 arrested as fight breaks out in South Bay Shopping Center, downtown Crossing in Boston. Wow. We had Nordstrom. in San Francisco shut down. What happens when in these small towns, rural areas, far away, towns of maybe 2,000, they say law enforcement has abandoned us, and they form their own local police force? What happens when the actual police force is instructed? We need to make sure these roving bands do not shut down trade to our city. And then they go and start controlling the highways. Factionalization.
I don't think that.
What happens if a
happen.
more
I would think that
extreme circumstance
I think
occurs?
it'd be more like the mob goes and starts raiding stores, and then they fight them. Let's just put it that way. Yeah. So I would think that would be way more likely than just shutting down the road. Why would you do that? Just wait till they get there and defend the store once it's there. And if you literally just let the store owners defend it, or like private security, and weren't going to prosecute them and they wouldn't get in trouble, then you would already have this. No one would, no one's going to let someone just take their stuff. Even in New York, they start fighting them when they're not allowed to, so, and the police won't do anything there, but they're starting to fight back. Even though if they kill them or something, they'll go and probably get prosecuted. It just becomes enough is enough.
And a group just outright says, we are controlling these roads into and out of our state from now on. And that's it. Look, I don't know. I can tell you this. Right now,
I think that sounds
a Republican lawyer and activist was killed in his own home. And immediately there are attempts to say, no, it may have been self-defense. We don't do that in any other political circumstance. Jussie Smollett lies, and the entire media comes out and says, MAGA country, racism in this country. You get the Big Bang Theory with their big group photo, and all that happened was apparently, allegedly, someone threw a thin bit of polyester twine around his neck or something like that and sprinkled the bleach on him. It's horrible. The real story is that he faked it. But either way, the dude wasn't dead, and he was completely fine and healthy. And then a national campaign of outrage over this poor actor. A GOP lawyer was murdered in his own home, and they're like, hold on there a minute, it may have been self-defense. That's my point.
Yeah, that's so true.
It may have been.
Conclusion.
It may have been. It may have been two guys fighting over a poker game. That's it. Hey, you got an ace up your sleeve. You're using special glasses. He's cheating. You guys are in on it. Fight breaks out. Dude punches him. Guy grabs something in his neck. Maybe. Or Republican activist filed a lawsuit against various organizations. One of those organizations, the rep shows up to his house, bangs on the door. He says, how dare you? They start arguing, and then a fight breaks out. Guy who comes to his house stabs him in the neck and then says, he was attacking me. He was attacking me. And they say, okay, maybe it's self-defense. It's a shame. I don't know if there are any cameras or if there's any evidence.
Yeah, I'm
because,
curious.
The other guy involved in the fight's no longer alive.
Yep.
I will stress, it may have been something totally non-political. Jussie Smollett was a hoax.
The fact that they're not releasing the guy's name, the perpetrator, kind of makes me wonder, though.
Maybe that this is just, we see the story and we're like, whoa, is it political? They didn't need to write that he was a GOP lawyer. Like when a truck driver dies or gets stabbed, do we got any national stories about that? We don't. That's my point. How many truck drivers, plumbers, carpenters, tradesmen, store clerks have been killed in their own home? I got to be honest. A lot of people get murdered in this country. I shouldn't say a lot, but like a substantial amount considering there's 300 and some odd million people. We don't have national headlines over that. So my warning is to be careful with these stories.
Yeah, but an anti-fraud, he's like an anti-election fraud person, and then it happens a year before the election. That's why it's a story. He's a prominent small government anti-election fraud guy, and then bam, year before the election.
But at the same time, to try to point out, compare this to Jussie Smollett. The reaction from the left when he lied and faked a hate crime was insane. Here we have a Republican lawyer and activist murdered in his own home. And it's just like, well, seems like a nothing burger. Maybe it's that attitude that keeps tensions to a minimum. But I feel like people on the right.
I mean, that's true. But if that attitude was from the left on leftist people too, It would be way smaller, the tensions would be, that's for sure.
Trump supporters, Republicans, are looking at that, and they're looking at it through their lens, saying we are under attack. And the left doesn't care at all. They don't care. There is no leftist who will come out and report on that story and say, please stop. We have to stop the violence. Yet when it goes either way, let me tell you this. If a far-right extremist attacked the left, everyone on the left will cry bloody murder, and Ben Shapiro will come out and say it was wrong. Of course he would. He's a good dude. When a Republican lawyer is murdered, I and people like Ben Shapiro and many others, apprised to the story, will come out and say it was wrong. And of course, we're good people. The left likely won't talk about it at all. Doesn't matter to them. They'll ignore it.
Yep.
In these stories where the far left extremists are attacking people, violating democratic principles.
I was saying that in the last segment with Joe Biden. You know, it's like they know he's corrupt, but they just don't care. If there was, without a shadow of a doubt, Donald Trump was really corrupt and everyone knew it, the right would turn on Trump. But the fact that people don't turn on Joe Biden on the left, they just excuse it. Just be like, well, we want our policies to go through. That really says a lot.
Like in New York, where most people are saying, stop, we need help. And the mayor's like, we got to deal with these migrants. The far left comes out and beats people who oppose them.
It's insane.
And you know what's going to happen? Leftist commentators will cheer them on. That's the state of this country. And so long as there's no backbone among those who believe in the Constitution and among law enforcement in many places, like where the Chaz operated, then I think we're headed in a very, very dangerous direction, which I mentioned in the first segment this morning. And that is a Chaz occupation on a large piece of private property. And then what? Let's say you've got a semi-rural area. Let's say it's slightly outside of New York City. What's the name of that? I don't know. I can't remember the name. Outside. Let me actually check my map because I want to actually point out this area. I think it's a good area to highlight. There's an area just to the west of New York in New Jersey that is lightly populated and I don't think I can find it. Lightly populated and very industrial. Where is it?
You have to run away in New Jersey if someone breaks into your home. If you can get out, you legally, you can't shoot back or anything. You have to just try to. They said if you even have a second-story balcony, jump off. Like what?
It's like a little city. No, I can't find it.
I don't know why he's so concerned. We get what your point is, Tim.
There's probably a whole bunch of examples. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of corporate land, but lower income. There's a lot of people who own property there, and it's just an investment property. The business has dried up, and so it's just like an empty building. What happens when far left extremists occupy it? And the person who owns it says, hey, guys, you can't be here. Whatever it is you're doing, you got to go. And they call the police, and the police say, there are 12 officers on rotation in this small town. What would you have us do? Contact the sheriff or the state. And so they do. And New Jersey says, we will not get involved in a conflict with leftist protesters because we've got an election coming up.
A militia.
And the property owner is like, I've got 50 far left extremists armed with rifles creating an occupation on my land. You know, let's say it's 3 acres of commercial property, and now it's worthless to me, and they're claiming it's theirs. So what happens? No idea.
A militia
It could be that the owner is politically persuaded himself. And
a militia comes to have a shootout, and then the media blames the militia.
You could maybe get private security who comes in and clashes. The police then intervene to stop the fighting, and there's a shootout happening, just like we already saw in Georgia, in Atlanta, just outside of Atlanta. A shootout, crazy. And it escalates. The shootout in Atlanta is interesting to me because, well, it's not the first one. There was the guy who went to the ICE facility in Seattle, in I think it was Tacoma, shooting and throwing firebombs. They killed him. Then you have a shootout in Atlanta. Is this not the Bleeding Kansas phase, pre-Civil War? I honestly don't know, because maybe
I don't know. Might just be rogue
and it
people.
calms down. But as Phil Labonte says,
I don't think there's that many extremists.
What's the off-ramp? I don't see it. I completely agree. So by all means, keep up the memes. Keep me trending when I say Civil War. But if you have any real criticisms of what I've been saying, by all means, tell me exactly where the off-ramp is. We can probably hypothesize as to how things cool down. Like I said, Donald Trump gets elected.
Yeah, more people going to the right.
Law enforcement is bolstered. And then we go and shut down the criminals And I don't see why that would cool things off, though. You can make the argument, people calm down. You can also make the argument that it justifies the far left extremists and they return with equal and opposite force.
Well, they're going to get crushed, though.
So tell me.
Because normal people won't like it.
I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4.
Yeah, I would say that's the off-ramp. It's going to cool down because more people are going to go to the right. And then the more extreme the left gets, the more normal people see it. The more people that go, because a lot of people do cover this stuff, so normal people would see it. They're just, the mainstream media doesn't. But the more that the mainstream media falls, and we know it's all falling slowly but surely, then normal people are going to be like, oh, this is what's happening. There's not like this whole, oh, Trump supporters, blah, 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 that the media wants to paint. It's going to be like, oh, so there's the left is fine, the right is fine, but then there's extremists mainly on the left, Antifa. So, okay, get them and throw them all in jail. It's like if there was a big gang in America, like MS-13 or something, which Antifa kind of is. It's just not as organized, I guess. People are going to want to get rid of them. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe for daily news updates, smash that like button, share this video with your friends, and share your thoughts on the story in the comments below. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.